"You need a woman like me," the Apache woman said to the rancher who had saved her life. The desert stretched endlessly, its golden sands melting into the distant mountains. The sun was low, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The wind blew warm and dry, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Somewhere in this vast, unforgiving land, a young Apache woman was running for her life. Her heart pounded in her chest, and every step she took threatened to give her away to the men chasing her. She had learned to move quietly, to read the land, and to trust the earth beneath her feet, but even that knowledge felt small against the danger that followed her. The woman's name was Nayeli. She was strong and brave, yet even she knew that courage alone could not save her from the armed men who hunted her. They were strangers to her, outsiders from a nearby settlement, and they had no respect for the Apache people. Nayeli had been collecting herbs near the river when they appeared, and now she ran, clutching the small bundle of medicinal plants tightly against her chest. Her dark hair whipped against her face and sweat stung her eyes, but she did not stop. Not far away on a lonely ranch, a man named James rode slowly along the edge of his property. James was a rancher in his mid-30s, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-browned skin and strong hands. He had lived alone for years, tending to his land and his animals. Life on the ranch was hard, but James knew it well. He understood the land, its dangers, and its quiet rewards. That evening, he had been checking the fences along the northern boundary when he heard a sudden, sharp noise. At first, he thought it was an animal. Then he heard the sound of heavy breathing and hurried footsteps, and something about the rhythm of the movement caught his attention. Curiosity and concern pulled him toward the source. James had faced danger before, though not often. Outlaws sometimes roamed near the edges of his property, and wild animals were always a threat. But what he saw now was unexpected. A young woman, dressed in traditional Apache clothing, was sprinting across the open land, looking over her shoulder in fear. Two men were following her, shouting angrily. James's instincts kicked in. He rode faster, gripping the reins tightly. As he approached, the woman stumbled over a rock, falling hard onto the sand. The men were closing in. Without thinking, James raised his rifle and shouted, "Hey, stop where you are." The men froze for a moment, surprised to see a figure on horseback blocking their path. James fired a warning shot into the air. The sound cracked sharply through the evening sky, and the men cursed and ran. Nayeli scrambled to her feet, her chest heaving. She looked at the man on the horse with wide, wary eyes. She did not speak, but she did not run either. She was uncertain, confused, and scared. The man seemed different from the others. His posture was firm, and there was something calm in his eyes, something that told her he was not a threat. James dismounted quickly and approached her, holding his hands up to show he meant no harm. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. His voice was low, steady, and kind. Nayeli shook her head, unsure how to respond. She had been raised to trust only her people, and strangers, especially men, were dangerous. But something in his tone made her hesitate. I need to get away," she said finally, her voice quiet but urgent. She glanced behind her, and the danger seemed to linger even after the men had disappeared over the hill. James nodded. "You can come with me," he said. "You'll be safe at my ranch." The horse moved steadily forward, carrying them away from the desert's edge and toward the safety of James's home. As they rode, Nayeli kept her eyes on the horizon. She did not speak, but she observed James closely. He was quiet, focused, and confident in a way that was rare. He seemed to know the land intimately, guiding the horse with ease. Slowly, the fear in her chest began to ease, replaced by a cautious sense of relief. She realized that this man had risked himself to save her, and that thought, strange as it felt, filled her with gratitude. By the time they reached the ranch, the sky was a deep purple, and the first stars began to shine. The ranch was small but sturdy, a cluster of wooden buildings surrounded by fences. Horses grazed in the paddock, and a few cows wandered near the barn. The land smelled of earth and livestock, a sharp but comforting scent. James led Nayeli inside the main house, which was simple but warm. A fire burned in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "You can rest here tonight," he said, pointing to a small room near the back. "I'll make sure you're safe." Naomi nodded, still cautious, but she allowed herself to enter the room. The walls were bare, the bed small, but it was clean and safe. For the first time in hours, she felt a sense of peace. As she settled on the bed, James prepared a simple meal in the kitchen. He brought it to her carefully, placing it on the small table in her room. "Eat something," he said kindly. "You need your strength." Naomi hesitated, then accepted the food. She ate slowly, her eyes never leaving the rancher. There was something reassuring about him, a quiet strength that made her feel protected. Over the next few hours, they spoke cautiously. James asked about her journey, her people, and why she had been in danger. Naomi answered in simple words, careful not to reveal too much. She had been trained to be wary, to share only what was necessary. James listened respectfully, never pressing her, never judging. Slowly, the tension between them began to ease. By the time the fire had burned low, Naomi realized that she was no longer afraid, not completely. She still carried the fear of the desert, of the men who had chased her, but it was mingled now with a sense of hope. Perhaps, she thought, not all outsiders were cruel. Perhaps some could be trusted. That night, as the stars shone brightly above the desert, Naomi lay awake, thinking about the events of the day. She had been running for her life, and yet here she was, safe in the company of someone who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. It was strange to feel this way about a stranger, but it was real. The rancher had saved her life, and that could never be forgotten. James, too, sat by the dying fire in the kitchen, thinking. He was not used to having company, especially not someone from a different world. Yet he felt a strange sense of duty and respect for the woman who had been thrust into danger through no fault of her own. She was strong, brave, and resourceful, and he admired that. He knew that the days ahead would be difficult, trust would need to be built, understanding reached across cultural lines, but he was willing to face those challenges. As the night deepened, both of them fell into a light sleep, the kind that comes after exhaustion and relief. Outside, the desert was quiet once more, the wind gentle and the land at peace. For now, the danger had passed. For now, they had each other. And in that quiet moment, the first spark of connection began to form between the Apache woman and the rancher who had saved her life. A spark that would grow in the days to come, shaping their lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The morning sun rose over the desert, golden and warm, spilling light across the ranch. Naomi woke first, stretching and gazing out the window. The land was vast, beautiful, and alive, and she felt a sense of calm. Today would be the first day of a new chapter. She did not yet know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time she felt a measure of hope. James soon joined her, offering a smile and a simple breakfast. "Good morning," he said. "Ready to start the day?" Naomi nodded, her eyes bright and attentive. She was still cautious, still wary, but she had survived the desert and she had survived her fear. She was alive, and she was learning that trust could be earned, even in the harshest of places. And so, the first day on the ranch began. The Apache woman who had once run for her life now faced a new journey, one of trust, survival, and understanding. The rancher who had saved her life would come to know her strength and courage, and together they would navigate the challenges of the land, the threats from the outside world, and the differences that separated them. The bond formed in that moment of danger would grow, shaping not only their lives but the story of two worlds meeting in the vast, unforgiving beauty of the Arizona desert. The morning sun shone brightly over the ranch, spilling golden light across the land. Naomi woke early, the soft hum of the wind and the distant sound of horses stirring in their pens filling the air. She stretched and took a deep breath, the desert scent mixed with the smell of hay and livestock. Life on the ranch was very different from what she had known. The mountains and plains had always been home, but the small wooden house, the fences, and the animals were something entirely new. She felt a mixture of curiosity, unease, and determination. She had survived the desert and the men who had chased her. Now she needed to survive this new place and learn its ways. James entered the room with a gentle smile and a small tray of breakfast. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well." Naomi nodded and took the tray. The food was simple: bread, cheese, and some fresh fruit, but she ate slowly, appreciating the kindness in the gesture. She could see that James treated her with respect, as though she were not just a guest but someone he genuinely cared for. That small kindness made her feel safer, though she remained cautious. After breakfast, James showed her around the ranch. There were fields with grazing cows, horses in pens, chickens clucking near the barn, and a small vegetable garden. Naomi had never lived on a ranch, but she was not unfamiliar with hard work. She observed carefully, asking questions about the animals and the land. James explained patiently, showing her how to feed the animals, check the fences, and even how to recognize which plants were useful for food or medicine. Naomi listened intently, learning quickly. She liked the way James spoke, not in a hurried or harsh tone but with calm patience. She realized that this man cared deeply about the land and the life he had built, and she admired that. Days passed and Naomi began to adjust. She rose with the sun, helping with the chores, learning to care for the animals, and exploring the land around the ranch. She discovered hidden paths, small springs, and rocky hills where wild herbs grew. She remembered the lessons from her people: how to read the land, find water, and survive in difficult terrain, and she shared her knowledge with James. Sometimes she would point out a plant and explain its uses, and he would listen with genuine interest. Slowly, a bond of mutual respect formed between them. Evenings were quiet and reflective. After the chores, they would sit near the fire, talking in low voices. Naomi told James about her life, about her family and her people, though carefully, leaving out anything that might bring danger to her community. James shared stories of his own life, how he had built the ranch from nothing, the struggles he had faced with storms, animals, and the harsh desert. They discovered that, despite their different worlds, they shared many qualities: resilience, independence, and a deep respect for the land. There were moments of tension, too. Naomi was proud and independent, and she sometimes chafed at the routines of the ranch. She did not like feeling that she owed anyone for her safety, even though she was grateful. James noticed this and never pushed her, giving her space when she needed it. Over time, she realized that trust was not weakness, it was a choice. She began to understand that James was not controlling her life, but offering support. That realization eased her heart, and she felt a growing sense of belonging. One day, while checking the fences near the northern pasture, they heard a commotion in the distance. A calf had wandered too close to the edge of the cliff, and the other animals were restless. Naomi did not hesitate. She moved quickly, her knowledge of terrain and animals allowing her to act with confidence. She guided the calf away from danger, her hands steady and her voice calm. James watched her with admiration. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "You know how to read the land and the animals." Naomi smiled faintly, pleased by the acknowledgement. She felt proud not just of her skill, but that someone respected it. Over the next few weeks, Naomi's role on the ranch became more than that of a guest. She helped with the daily work, tended the animals, and even repaired parts of the fences. Her knowledge of herbs allowed her to care for small injuries among the animals and James himself when he scratched his hand on a thorny bush. She showed James how to make simple remedies from plants that grew nearby. In return, he taught her new skills: how to manage the cattle, mend equipment, and navigate the sometimes treacherous desert paths safely. The nights were quieter, spent sitting under the stars. The desert sky was endless and breathtaking, filled with shining points of light. Sometimes they spoke of their dreams and hopes, other times they simply watched the stars in silence. Naomi learned to trust James not just as a protector, but as a companion in thought and conversation. She began to feel that perhaps not all men outside her world were cruel. Some, like him, could be honorable and kind. That thought gave her hope for the first time in a long while. Not everything was easy, however. Nayeli faced moments of doubt and loneliness. She missed her family and her people, and she feared that staying on the ranch might take her further from them. Yet, she also recognized that she had nowhere else to turn immediately, and that the land and life James offered were safe and full of opportunity. She struggled to reconcile the two parts of her life, the world she had come from and the world she was now part of. It was a delicate balance, one that required patience, understanding, and courage. One afternoon, as a sudden windstorm blew across the plains, Nayeli helped secure the animals and protect the barns. The storm was harsh, and the dust made it difficult to see. She moved with precision, guiding the animals calmly and ensuring the fences held. James worked alongside her, his trust in her complete. That day, Nayeli realized something important. Strength was not just about surviving danger alone, but about working together to face challenges. Their partnership was becoming real, built on respect, trust, and shared effort. In quiet moments, Nayeli also reflected on the differences between her people and James's world. She thought about the lessons of her childhood, the connection to the land, the importance of community, and the ways her people survived and thrived in a harsh environment. She shared these insights with James slowly, teaching him lessons that no book could provide. He listened, fascinated and grateful, learning from her as she learned from him. Their worldviews began to blend, creating a new understanding that was neither entirely Apache nor entirely rancher, but something unique and valuable. As the days turned into weeks, the community near the ranch began to notice Nayeli. Some were curious, some skeptical, and some admiring. She carried herself with dignity and confidence, showing through her actions that she was capable, intelligent, and strong. James never pressured her, but he quietly observed, proud of her courage and adaptability. The subtle tension between them began to shift, moving from caution to a quiet recognition that they were learning to depend on each other not just for survival, but for companionship. One evening after the sun had dipped behind the mountains, Nayeli and James sat together by the fire. The air was cool and the stars reflected in their eyes. Nayeli spoke softly. "I have learned much here, more than I expected." James nodded. "And I have learned from you as well. You see things I never noticed, and your knowledge is remarkable." There was a pause, and in that silence, a deep understanding passed between them. Trust had been established, and respect had grown into something more profound. Nayeli realized that her journey was not just about surviving danger, but about discovering her own strength in a new world. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and cultural differences, and she had thrived. James recognized that his life had become richer with her presence. He had always valued solitude and independence, but he now understood that true strength could also come from partnership. As night fell fully, the wind quieted, and the desert lay calm. Nayeli looked out at the land she now called part of her life. She had learned to adapt, to trust, and to value the bond she was forming with James. She felt a quiet pride, knowing that she had not only survived the desert and the dangers that threatened her life, but had also found a place where she could grow, contribute, and be respected. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new challenges. The ranch would demand hard work and the outside world might still pose threats. Yet she felt ready. She had faced fear before and had come out stronger. And now she was not alone. She had James beside her, a man who respected her, learned from her, and had risked himself to save her life. That trust and partnership would shape the days to come, guiding them both through hardships, joys, and the unknown future that awaited. And in that quiet desert night under the endless sky filled with stars, Nayeli finally allowed herself to feel a sense of belonging. She was no longer just a woman running for her life. She was a partner, a helper, a friend, and perhaps even more. The ranch, the land, and the life she was building with James had become a new home, a place where courage, respect, and trust could flourish side by side. The days grew hotter as summer approached, and the desert sun blazed over the ranch. Nayeli had grown stronger and more confident with each passing day. She had learned the routines of the ranch, how to tend to the animals, how to repair fences, and even how to prepare meals with limited supplies. James continued to guide her, teaching her about the cattle, the land, and the ways of ranch life. Together, they had built a rhythm that allowed the ranch to thrive. Yet, the peace they had found was fragile. News had reached James that a small group of outlaws had been seen near neighboring ranches, taking what they wanted and threatening anyone who resisted. The thought of danger returning unsettled him, and he began to watch the horizon more closely. He kept his concerns to himself, not wanting to frighten Naeli, but she noticed the tension in his eyes. One afternoon, while checking the western fences, they spotted a group of men on horseback in the distance. Their movements were deliberate and their intent clear. Naeli's heart raced, and she instinctively stepped closer to James. He signaled her to stay calm. "We can handle this," he whispered. They both knew the land better than the outlaws, and that knowledge could give them an advantage. The men approached slowly, shouting and brandishing weapons. James and Naeli moved quickly to guide the animals into the barn. Naeli's understanding of the animals' behavior proved invaluable. She calmed the frightened cows and directed them away from danger. James defended the property, shouting warnings and keeping the intruders at a distance. Their movements were coordinated, silent communication passing between them without words. As the outlaws realized that the ranch was defended and the animals were secured, they became frustrated. One of them tried to force his way past the fence, but James met him head-on. Naeli, observing the man's movements, grabbed a nearby rope and skillfully tied the intruder's hands, using techniques she had learned from her people. The man struggled, surprised by her speed and strength. The others, seeing their companion captured, decided it was not worth the risk and rode away, shouting threats that were carried off by the wind. When the dust settled, James and Naeli stood together, catching their breath. "You were incredible," James said, his voice filled with admiration. Naeli shook her head, brushing sand from her clothes. "I only did what I had to," she replied softly. Yet in that moment, both of them realized how much they had come to rely on each other. It was no longer just about survival, it was about trust, courage, and partnership. The event left a mark on both of them. Naeli understood that danger could appear at any moment, and James saw clearly how much strength and skill she possessed. That evening they sat near the fire, sharing a quiet meal. Naeli looked at James thoughtfully. "The land is harsh," she said, "but it can also teach. If you know how to listen." James nodded. "I've learned that from you," he admitted. "You see things I never could on my own." She taught James how to anticipate movement, how to read signs in the environment that indicated danger, and how to react quickly. James, in turn, shared strategies for negotiating with neighbors and responding to threats without unnecessary violence. Together, they formed a plan to protect their home and each other. Despite the tension, there were moments of quiet joy. Naeli found herself enjoying the beauty of the desert in ways she never had before. She would watch the sunrise over the mountains, listen to the wind rustling through the trees, and feel a deep connection to the land she now called home. James often joined her during these moments, and they would speak softly, sharing thoughts and stories. Their bond deepened, moving from mutual respect to a quiet, unspoken affection. One afternoon, a traveler arrived at the ranch. He was a young man, carrying news from the town nearby. The roads had grown more dangerous, he said, and travelers had been warned to avoid the area. He also spoke of tensions between local ranchers and groups who claimed the land was theirs by right. James listened carefully, understanding that their safety depended not just on their strength but on knowledge and vigilance. Naeli studied the man quietly, noting his movements and expressions. She sensed the fear in his voice and recognized the truth in his warnings. The presence of the traveler reminded them both that the world outside the ranch was unpredictable. They could prepare, they could plan, but they could not control everything. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, James and Naeli discussed their future. "We have to be ready for anything," James said. Naeli nodded. "And we can face it together. "You and I," she replied. Their partnership became more than practical. Naomi's insight and courage complemented James's experience and strategy. They learned to anticipate each other's thoughts, moving in harmony to respond to challenges. Whether it was guiding frightened animals, fortifying the fences, or quietly observing the horizon, their actions were synchronized. It was a partnership built not just on necessity, but on understanding and trust. One night, a particularly strong windstorm blew across the desert. The sky was dark, and the ranch was battered by sand and dust. The animals were frightened, and the fences creaked under the strain. Naomi and James worked tirelessly, securing gates, calming the animals, and repairing damage as it occurred. They spoke little, their actions communicating everything. When the storm passed, they were exhausted but victorious. The ranch had survived, and so had they. In the quiet that followed, Naomi realized how far she had come. She had faced danger, adapted to a new life, and built a bond with someone she had once considered a stranger. James had come to appreciate her skills, her courage, and her perspective. The desert and the ranch had tested them both, and they had emerged stronger together. That night, as they sat by the fire, she looked at James with a sense of calm and gratitude. "We make a good team," she said softly. James smiled, a warmth in his eyes that went beyond admiration. "Yes, we do," he replied. In that moment, words were enough to express the growing understanding and connection between them. They had faced danger, learned to trust each other, and discovered the value of partnership in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. The following days were quieter, though the awareness of possible threats remained. Naomi and James continued their routines, always watchful, always prepared. The bond they had formed allowed them to move confidently, knowing that they could rely on each other. Naomi began to feel a sense of belonging that she had not expected. The ranch was no longer just a place of refuge. It had become a home, shaped by shared work, shared danger, and shared respect. One afternoon, they received news that a neighboring ranch had been attacked. The animals were taken, and the ranchers were forced to flee. James and Naomi understood that the danger was not distant, it was real and ongoing. They strengthened their defenses, shared knowledge with trusted neighbors, and prepared for the possibility of future threats. Naomi's courage and insight were invaluable, guiding their actions with precision and clarity. Through all these challenges, the relationship between Naomi and James deepened. They shared meals, stories, and quiet moments under the stars. They spoke of their hopes, their fears, and their dreams for the future. Naomi began to see that life on the ranch, though hard, could offer something she had never expected, a sense of partnership and connection that transcended fear and past hardships. James realized that the strength he admired in her was matched by her trust and loyalty, creating a bond that was unshakable. As the sun set over the desert, casting long shadows across the land, Naomi and James stood together, looking out over the ranch. The animals grazed peacefully, the fences held strong, and the land seemed calm once more. Yet both knew that challenges would come again, that the world outside was unpredictable. But for now, they had each other, and that made all the difference. In the quiet evening, Naomi spoke softly. "The land tests us," she said, "but it also teaches us. We must learn or we cannot survive." James nodded, understanding her meaning. They had learned much about the land, about each other, and about themselves. The trials they had faced had strengthened their partnership, creating a foundation for whatever might come next. The night stretched over the desert, filled with stars and the soft whisper of the wind. Naomi and James sat by the fire, reflecting on all they had faced. The bond between them was now clear, rooted in respect, courage, and trust. They had faced danger, adapted to the land, and discovered the power of partnership. Together, they were stronger than they could ever be alone. And in that quiet, desert night, they both understood something essential. The world might be harsh, unpredictable, and dangerous, but together they could face it all. The ranch had become more than a place of survival. It was a place of growth, learning, and trust. and the partnership that had begun in a moment of danger had grown into something enduring, shaping their lives and preparing them for the challenges yet to come. The desert sun rose slowly over the ranch, painting the land in warm shades of gold. Nayeli had become a part of the daily rhythm, moving with purpose and confidence. She knew each animal, each path, and every corner of the ranch. Her knowledge of the land had grown deeper, and so had her connection with James. Together, they had faced danger, repaired fences, tended animals, and weathered storms. Their partnership was no longer just about survival. It had become a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. This morning, as the two of them worked in the fields, James noticed how seamlessly Nayeli moved among the cattle, guiding them with patience and confidence. "You have a way with them," he said, his voice carrying a note of admiration. Nayeli smiled faintly. "They can sense fear," she replied. "If you are calm, they follow. If you panic, they panic." James nodded thoughtfully. He had learned to respect her skill and insight, realizing that her knowledge was not only practical but also intuitive, something he could not have taught her. The bond between them grew stronger with each shared task. Nayeli began to teach James lessons from her own life and culture. She showed him how to read subtle signs in the environment, the movement of birds, the tracks of animals, and the smell of the wind. These small but powerful observations allowed them to anticipate trouble before it arrived. James, in turn, taught Nayeli about the workings of a ranch, how to manage the cattle, maintain the land, and negotiate with neighboring ranchers. Their exchange of knowledge was not just practical, it created a deeper connection, one built on trust and mutual respect. One afternoon, while they were repairing a broken fence near the edge of the property, a group of riders appeared in the distance. This time, Nayeli and James were prepared. They watched carefully, analyzing the movements and intentions of the strangers. Nayeli whispered, "They are looking for trouble." James nodded. Together, they devised a plan to protect the ranch without unnecessary confrontation. Nayeli guided the cattle to a secure area, while James positioned himself near the barn, ready to defend if needed. Their coordination was flawless, each anticipating the other's actions with unspoken understanding. When the riders approached, they quickly realized the ranch was well prepared. Nayeli's quick thinking and James's readiness made the intruders hesitate. The strangers rode away without causing harm, leaving behind only the wind and the dust. James exhaled, relief mixing with admiration. "We make a good team," he said, glancing at Nayeli. She nodded, feeling a quiet pride. The experience reinforced their reliance on each other, not just for survival, but as equals capable of facing any challenge together. Their partnership extended beyond practical matters. Nayeli began to feel a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. She shared stories of her people, her childhood, and the lessons she had learned from the land. James listened with patience and respect, asking questions and showing genuine interest. Through these conversations, they both learned to appreciate each other's perspective. Nayeli realized that trust and respect could bridge worlds, even those as different as hers and James's. Evenings were often spent together under the stars, sharing quiet moments of reflection. The desert sky was vast and filled with light, and they would sit side by side, speaking softly or simply enjoying the calm. In these moments, Nayeli felt a deep connection not only to James but to the land itself. She had come to understand that strength was not just about surviving danger, it was about understanding, trust, and the willingness to work together. James felt the same. Her presence had changed his life, teaching him patience, observation, and the value of partnership. One day, while exploring a nearby hill, Nayeli pointed out a small spring hidden among the rocks. "This water can help the animals during dry months," she explained. James studied the area, impressed by her knowledge. Together, they dug a small trench to guide the water to the pasture, ensuring the cattle would have a steady supply. This small project was a testament to their teamwork and growing reliance on each other. They worked side by side, laughing when mistakes were made and celebrating each small success. The local community began to take notice of Naomi's presence. Some were curious, some skeptical, and some admiring. They saw a woman who was capable, strong, and confident, moving with purpose and respect for the land. James never pressured her to fit into anyone's expectations, allowing her to remain true to herself. Naomi's courage and intelligence earned her respect, not just from James but from those who observed her from afar. One evening, a neighboring rancher came by to discuss trade and shared concerns about increased bandit activity. Naomi and James listened carefully, analyzing the situation together. Naomi offered suggestions based on her observations of the land and animal behavior, while James contributed strategies for security and negotiation. Their collaboration impressed the rancher, who left with a sense of admiration for the two of them. Naomi realized that her voice and insight mattered, that she could contribute meaningfully to the safety and prosperity of the community. Their days were not without challenges, though. One afternoon, a sudden fire broke out near the edge of the pasture. The dry grass ignited quickly, threatening the animals and structures. Naomi and James acted immediately, using buckets of water, shovels, and quick thinking to contain the flames. Naomi's knowledge of the wind patterns and dry brush helped them anticipate the fire's movement. Together, they fought the fire until it was under control. Exhausted but victorious, they leaned against each other, sharing a quiet moment of relief. That night, as they sat by the fire, James spoke softly. "You have changed my life," he said. Naomi looked at him, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "And you have changed mine," she replied. In that moment, they understood that their partnership was no longer just practical, it was emotional. They relied on each other not only for survival and work, but for support, understanding, and trust. The following weeks brought new lessons. Naomi taught James how to use natural remedies for small injuries, how to identify plants that could provide food or medicine, and how to observe the land for signs of weather changes. James taught Naomi skills in construction, animal care, and negotiation. Their shared knowledge strengthened their bond and allowed them to face challenges with confidence. Through these experiences, they discovered a quiet joy in each other's company. They would work together, share meals, and spend evenings under the stars. Conversations ranged from practical matters to stories of their pasts and hopes for the future. Naomi began to understand that life could be shared without losing independence, and James realized that partnership did not diminish strength but enhanced it. One morning, as they walked through the pasture, Naomi spoke of her people. She described the traditions, the connection to the land, and the lessons learned from her elders. James listened with genuine interest, asking questions and absorbing every detail. Through these conversations, they built a bridge between two worlds, finding common ground and mutual respect. Their bond was tested once more when a group of outlaws returned, attempting to steal livestock. This time, Naomi and James were fully prepared. Naomi anticipated the intruders' movements, guiding the cattle to safety, while James confronted the men with authority and courage. Their teamwork was flawless, and the intruders fled, realizing they could not overpower the pair. Afterward, they stood together, exhausted but triumphant, understanding that their combined strength was greater than any threat. As the sun set over the desert, casting long shadows across the land, Naomi and James reflected on all they had accomplished. The ranch was secure, the animals safe, and the land cared for. But more importantly, they had discovered the value of partnership, trust, and mutual respect. Naomi realized that she had found a home, not just in the ranch or the land, but in the bond she shared with James. That evening, they sat quietly, watching the stars appear one by one. Naomi turned to James and said softly, "We have learned much together." "More than I imagined." James nodded, a warmth in his eyes. "And we will continue to learn," he replied. "Together." In that moment, they understood that their connection was unbreakable, built on shared experiences, respect, and the understanding that life was stronger when faced together. The days continued in this rhythm of work, learning, and quiet reflection. Naomi's presence had brought strength and insight to the ranch, while James's guidance had helped her adapt to a new world. Their bond grew deeper, a blend of friendship, trust, and unspoken affection. They had faced danger, learned from each other, and discovered the power of partnership. In the quiet desert nights, under the endless sky, Naomi and James found comfort in each other. They had learned that survival was not only about facing threats, but also about understanding, trust, and companionship. The ranch had become more than a place of work. It was a place of growth, learning, and emotional connection. And as the stars shone brightly over the desert, Naomi finally understood something essential. Life could be harsh, unpredictable, and challenging, but with trust, respect, and partnership, even the most difficult path could be navigated. Together, she and James had discovered the strength to face the unknown, building not only a thriving ranch but a bond that would shape their lives in the days and years to come. The morning sun rose gently over the ranch, casting a warm glow on the land. The desert was calm, the air soft with the scent of earth and grass. Naomi stood outside the small house, stretching and breathing in the fresh air. She had grown strong and confident over the past months, her life now intertwined with the rhythms of the ranch. The animals stirred in the fields, the horses nickered softly, and the cattle moved slowly, grazing peacefully. Everything seemed in balance, yet she knew that life could change in an instant. James emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth and smiling when he saw her. "Good morning," he said warmly. Naomi smiled back, feeling a sense of ease she had never known before. Their bond had grown over months of shared work, danger, and quiet moments, and now it felt like a natural part of their lives. They understood each other without needing many words, their connection built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. That day, they worked together preparing the land for the coming season. Naomi showed James how to plant seeds in a new field, teaching him techniques she had learned from her people. She explained how to observe the soil, the wind, and the position of the sun to ensure the plants would thrive. James listened carefully, impressed by her knowledge and patience. Together, they dug, planted, and watered, their hands moving in harmony, a rhythm born of cooperation and understanding. As they worked, Naomi thought about how far she had come. She had been running for her life, uncertain of whom to trust, yet now she was a vital part of the ranch and James's life. The transition had not been easy, but she had learned to adapt, to share her skills, and to accept help when needed. James, too, had changed. He had lived a solitary life for years, valuing independence above all else, yet he now understood the strength and joy that could come from partnership. In the afternoon, a visitor arrived, a young messenger from the nearby town. He brought news that a neighboring ranch had been attacked by bandits and that travelers should be cautious in the area. James and Naomi listened carefully, aware that their world was still unpredictable, yet neither of them felt fear as they once had. They had learned to face challenges together, and their bond had made them stronger. Naomi shared her observations of the land and the movement of people nearby, while James considered strategies to keep their home safe. Together, they formulated a plan to protect the ranch and ensure the safety of the animals. After the messenger left, they walked through the fields, discussing their plans and sharing quiet moments. Naomi paused to watch a group of birds nesting in a tree. "They always know where to go," she said softly. "Even when the world is dangerous, they find their way." James nodded, understanding her meaning. Their lives had been full of danger, uncertainty, and challenge, but they had found a way to navigate it together. Their partnership was no longer just practical, it had become emotional, built on trust, respect, and understanding. The evening brought calm. They sat by the fire, sharing a simple meal. The sky above was filled with stars, clear and bright in the desert night. Naomi spoke of her people, of the lessons learned from the land, and the importance of community. James listened attentively, fascinated by her stories and grateful for the wisdom she shared. Through their conversations, they had built a bridge between two worlds, creating a life that combined the strengths of both. One night, as the wind whispered through the trees, Naomi turned to James. "I have learned much here," she said softly, "about the land, about life, and about trust." James looked at her, a warm light in his eyes. "And I have learned from you," he replied. "You have shown me patience, observation, and courage in ways I never imagined." In that moment, they both understood that their bond had grown into something enduring, something that could withstand challenges and shape the future. Weeks passed, and life on the ranch continued in its rhythm of work, learning, and quiet reflection. Naomi's presence had brought insight, skill, and calm to every aspect of life, while James's guidance had helped her adapt and thrive. Their partnership was now a balance of strength and trust, each relying on the other without losing independence. Together, they faced the challenges of the land, the threats of the outside world, and the intricacies of daily life. One day, as they worked repairing the barn roof, Naomi paused and looked at James. The sky was a brilliant blue and the desert stretched endlessly around them. "You need a woman like me," she said, her voice steady but soft. James stopped, surprised at her words, and looked at her with deep understanding. She meant more than companionship. She meant partnership, trust, and shared strength. In that moment, James realized that she had become an inseparable part of his life, someone who complemented him in every way. James smiled and placed a hand on hers. "And I need a woman like you," he replied. The words were simple, but the meaning was profound. They had built a life together, faced dangers side by side, and learned from each other. Their bond was more than survival. It was connection, respect, and love. Naomi felt a sense of calm and belonging she had never experienced before. She was no longer a stranger in a new land. She was home. The following days were filled with preparation for the coming season. They worked together planting crops, tending animals, and reinforcing the fences. Naomi taught James how to make herbal remedies for the animals and for minor injuries. James showed her ways to strengthen the barn and improve the water supply. Every task became a demonstration of their partnership, their combined strength, and their shared knowledge. Neighbors began to notice the changes as well. Naomi's presence, her skill, and her confidence earned her respect and admiration. They saw a woman who could handle herself, who contributed to the safety and success of the ranch, and who had earned the trust of a man known for his independence. James observed with quiet pride, knowing that their partnership had not only strengthened the ranch, but also their connection to the community. One afternoon, as they watched the sun set behind the mountains, Naomi spoke quietly. "Life is hard here," she said, "but it is also full of lessons. Together we can face anything." James nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yes," he agreed. "We have learned that strength comes from partnership and trust can build a home." In that moment, they understood the truth of their words. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and challenge, and had come through stronger because of their bond. The seasons changed, and the ranch continued to thrive. Naomi and James worked side by side, their partnership a blend of skill, trust, and care. They faced occasional challenges, storms, wildfires, and threats from outsiders, but together they handled each situation with confidence. Naomi's insight and knowledge of the land complemented James's experience and strategy, creating a life of balance and strength. Over time, their quiet moments together grew deeper. Evenings under the stars became opportunities for reflection, conversation, and connection. They spoke of their dreams, their hopes, and the life they wanted to build together. Naomi shared stories of her people, their traditions, and the lessons of survival, while James shared his experiences and the challenges he had overcome. Through these exchanges, they built a foundation of understanding and respect that would carry them through any challenge. One morning, Naomi tended the garden while James checked the fences. The desert air was warm and the animals moved peacefully around them. Nayeli paused, watching a small bird hop along the edge of the field. "Even in the harshest places," she said softly, "life finds a way." James joined her, nodding. "And together we find our way too," he replied. In that quiet moment, they realized that they had created something rare, a life of balance, trust, and connection, rooted in respect and shared strength. As the sun set once more, casting long shadows across the land, Nayeli and James stood together, looking out over the ranch. The animals were safe, the fields were cared for, and the fences held strong. Their journey had been long and challenging, but they had come through it together. Nayeli's words from that morning echoed in James's mind. "You need a woman like me." He understood fully now. She had brought courage, skill, wisdom, and companionship into his life, and he in turn had offered her safety, respect, and partnership. That night, as the stars appeared one by one in the clear desert sky, Nayeli and James sat by the fire, sharing a quiet meal. They spoke softly of the future, of the life they wanted to continue building together. The bond between them was no longer tentative or uncertain. It was strong, unshakable, and full of promise. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and cultural differences, yet had created a life that was richer, stronger, and more meaningful than either could have imagined alone. In the silence of the night, surrounded by the calm of the desert, Nayeli finally allowed herself to feel complete peace. She had survived, adapted, and grown, and she had found a companion who respected and valued her. James, too, felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known. Life on the ranch was no longer solitary or uncertain. It was shared, meaningful, and full of hope. Together, they had faced the world and discovered that the greatest strength came from partnership, trust, and love. As the desert night stretched on, filled with the soft whisper of wind and the distant calls of nocturnal animals, Nayeli leaned slightly against James. He placed an arm around her, and they both gazed out over the land they had nurtured and protected. The ranch was secure, the animals safe, and the land alive with promise. Their journey had brought them to this place of safety, understanding, and belonging. And so, the Apache woman who had once run for her life now stood firmly in a new life, one filled with trust, respect, and partnership. The rancher who had saved her life now understood the value of companionship, courage, and shared strength. Together they faced the future with hope, knowing that no matter what challenges came, they would face them side by side. The desert, once harsh and uncertain, had become a home, shaped not just by survival but by love, respect, and partnership.